Hey everybody, it's Aunt Bibi. Today is Monday, June 3rd, 2019. I'm Barb Hammer. I want to do yet another video reluctantly on Bernie Sanders. I've been watching Scott Creighton's videos about Bernie, and there have been some things that I've realized about the Bernie Sanders campaign for 2020 and what's different from when he ran for the 2016 nomination. Scott did this video about the Virginia Beach shooting and the reaction from Democratic Party candidates. And he mentioned Bernie's response. He pulled up this tweet from Bernie on, I guess was it Saturday? Oh no, Friday. It was on Friday that the shooting happened. And there was this immediate response, very insensitive response from Democratic Party elected officials, so including Bernie. Well, okay, this is the thing I'll get into. So Bernie tweeted this out saying that Jane and I are grieving for the victims in Virginia Beach and their families. The days of the NRA controlling Congress and writing our gun laws must end. Congress must listen to the American people and pass gun safety legislation. This sickening gun violence must stop. So I realized, I remember Bernie back when he was running for the 2016 Democratic Party nomination. And what was different was, people forget this. Bernie in the Senate, as he was in Congress, is an independent. And what's happened since 2016 is that Bernie isn't pretending to be an independent anymore. That was the thing that attracted a lot of people to Bernie for his 2016 campaign. Was he was an independent. He did have some different views than the mainstream Democratic Party line. But he's not pretending anymore. He's towing the party line now. And one of the things that made Bernie different when he ran for the 2016 Democratic Party nomination was his views on gun control and the rights of gun owners. So since he's from a relatively rural state in New England, Vermont, and I don't think the state of Vermont really has gun laws, gun control. Or if they do, they're not very strict because there's a culture of hunting there. So they don't really have a gun problem in Vermont that I know of. And that was reflected in Bernie's views on gun ownership. And he was very demonized back during the 2016 Democratic Party primaries and nomination. And a lot of Democrats, or corporate Democrats, Hillary Clinton supporters, were saying, well, Bernie's not really a Democrat. And they would cite the fact that officially Bernie is an independent in the Senate as he was in Congress. Now, he does meet he's part of the Democratic Party caucus on Capitol Hill. But technically, he hasn't been a Democrat, but I think he's kind of abandoned that. So I would say Bernie's a Democrat now. So not only is his views on gun control different now for the 2020 nomination, so his views on immigration, as I showed in my previous video, and I'll give you the links to all these videos and sites in the show notes. So his views on immigration have changed, as I and Scott have shown. And I have to tell you, in 2016, so I was really disappointed to see all the fraud during the primaries in 2016, when it seemed Bernie won the nomination based on the primaries, but there was so much rigging for Hillary, and Bernie's supporters didn't realize that there was an agreement in advance that Hillary was definitely going to be the nominee. So I was disappointed, but I definitely was not going to vote for Hillary Clinton, so I voted for Dr. Jill Stein, and I knew she wouldn't win. So I wasn't really surprised that Trump won, quite frankly. And it was interesting after the election. So yeah, Bernie had a new book coming out. He started writing after the nomination after Hillary was nominated. I guess he was working on this book, and it came out around the time of the election. It was called Our Revolution. And so Bernie was planning to go on a book tour, and so I thought it'd be interesting. I live in British Columbia, right on the border with Washington State. I live near Vancouver and not that far from Seattle. So Bernie was going to make a stop in Seattle, and I decided to go, and I'm glad I did. It was interesting. So actually, at the book tour, I submitted a question that he took some questions from the audience. It was at a little church in Seattle. So they took some questions, and they had handed out cards, and I wrote out a card very clearly. I just wrote in block letters, as I do, because it's easier for people to read that. And I made my question very simple, and I just sort of asked him, well, do you think the Democratic Party has learned anything from the 2016 election? Because Trump won. Hillary was defeated. And when they read the question out, he kind of paused and sighed and said something like, well, no. Um, so not long after the election, Bernie said after the election, Bernie said, and I found articles kind of to refresh my memory. I kind of did a search, and yeah, Bernie, he clearly stated that he would work with Donald Trump, and it was especially on the issue of jobs and how manufacturing had been destroyed, pretty much in the U.S., and people lost a lot of manufacturing jobs. So he would work with Trump to rebuild those manufacturing jobs. And I thought, well, that's very positive. I was happy to hear that, because that was a very important populist message that both Bernie and Trump had campaigned on. But that didn't last long. So there was the Me Too movement, and that turned into the Women's March, which happened, I think, right after Trump's inauguration, or right before, January anyway. And also, right after the election, we learned this. So there was a book about Hillary's campaign. And because they didn't expect Hillary to lose. So on election night, oh yeah, there's a book, Shattered. So there were a couple of reporters who were sort of embedded in Hillary Clinton's campaign. And they reported that when Hillary was defeated on election night, so her campaign manager, what's his name? I can't remember. Campaign manager and her campaign chair, John Podesta. Robbie Mook was her campaign manager. They had decided that they were going to blame Russia for Hillary's loss. So Bernie initially was saying he would work with Trump as president after the inauguration, but then I realized Bernie got the memo from the DNC. And so he changed his tune, and he immediately adopted this line from the Democrats and the DNC that Russia was to blame for Hillary's election. I mean, for Hillary's loss. And it was about demonizing Trump and connecting him with Trump. And they had done the same thing during the primaries with Bernie. So they were trying to link Bernie with Russia because he and Jane, on their honeymoon, they had gone to the sister city of Burlington, Vermont, which at the time was in the then Soviet Union, Russia. And then Hillary's campaign, they were trying to connect Dr. Jill Stein with Russia, because she had gone to a Russia Today RT celebration that I don't know, it was like their 5th or 10th year anniversary in Moscow, along with Michael Flynn, who was in the Trump cabinet. So they were trying to, Hillary's campaign, even before she lost in the election, they were sort of pushing this Russia, smearing opponents with this connection to Russia. So anyway, it's kind of interesting. So both Bernie and Trump, they ran on a populist message. So Bernie is kind of like, he still has a populist message somewhat. But Bernie, he's not pretending to be independent anymore. That's what I've realized. So he's definitely a Democrat this time around. So Scott, another thing was Scott was talking about the polling. So let me find. So Scott did another. He's done. Let's see, 1, 2. He's done 3 videos about Bernie, but he mentioned Bernie in this one about the Virginia Beach shooting. And he kind of clarified Bernie's views on immigration. And I have to clarify, I did get something wrong in my video where I talked about Bernie's change on immigration. So I was saying that open borders and comprehensive immigration reform are the same thing. Well, they're not the same thing. They're both bad for the middle class. But comprehensive immigration reform, in a way, is worse. So Bernie, he still says he's opposed to open borders. So that's the free flow of labor across borders. But he says he supports comprehensive immigration reform. And in some ways, and actually in some ways that's worse, because there would be a wall, and the flow of people across the border, especially from Mexico, would be carefully controlled to make sure that just cheap labor is allowed in, and then they're kind of trapped and they're caught in this endless cycle. It's called the path to citizenship, but it's kind of a vicious circle where there's sort of workers are trapped in virtually slave conditions. And if they don't behave themselves, they can be deported, and then new slave labor is brought in. Anyway, so Bernie, so that's Bernie's position on immigration. And then Scott did this video where he was talking about the polling, and Scott was saying that Bernie's polling this time around is better than it was at this time in the election cycle back in 2015. So back in 2015, Bernie wasn't really that well known, really. People forget that. So I only knew about Bernie because I had watched him on Bill Moyer's show on PBS, and I'd seen Bernie. He had appeared, and when I learned he had announced that he was running for the Democratic Party nomination for 2016, I thought, oh, well, that's interesting, So, yeah, he's definitely a populist, so I thought that was an improvement. So Scott is saying that Bernie is doing better this time around. Well, yeah, Bernie's better known. But the other thing, why the crowds don't seem very enthusiastic, I would say, is because Scott hasn't mentioned this, and I have talked about this because I was really closely involved. It was Bernie had a coalition, not just of Democrats, but independents and people in the GOP. Bernie even had evangelicals, libertarians who were really enthusiastic about him because he had a very anti establishment message. So when they were polling for Bernie back in 2015, so he announced in the spring of 2015. So here we are, late spring. Um, you could say early summer. So he wasn't get the polling numbers because a lot of his support was actually outside of the Democratic Party. So I think when they're polling people, they are polling Democratic Party voters. So I was a sort of a traditional Democratic Party voter. So I would have been included in the poll, but I was in the minority. Um, so back in 2015, Bernie, when they were polling, I don't think they were including independents or people in the GOP. There were a lot of people in the GOP who were going to vote for Bernie. And Bernie would have easily won the election, the general election. He really would have. So I think that's what's different now. So Scott was saying Bernie's doing better now. Yeah, he's better known, but also Bernie is a Democrat now. So he's towing the party line. He's towing the party line now on immigration because he supports comprehensive immigration reform. He doesn't, on his website, he doesn't talk about open borders. It's not there anymore, his position on that. He's been forced, well, he was forced to demonize Trump, even though he initially said he was going to work with Trump on the populist issue of jobs and manufacturing in the US. And Bernie has been forced to toe the party line on gun control too. Sorry. So anyway, Scott did. So he did this video on is Bernie is Bernie Sanders running for office or selling ice cream? And I have to show you this meme. This is really funny. So Abdul Saint, who follows Scott and me on Twitter, and he's a very talented techie, and he's a good guy, and he has his own YouTube channel. I'll give you the links, and he has his own blog, and he writes occasionally about politics. But he came up with this meme. So he said there was sort of a brief exchange about Bernie, and so he had this meme. He replied, "Well, Bernie has pimped his ride for this momentous occasion." And here's the meme. It says, so he took the word muck resistance, and he didn't like it. He said, so Abdul was saying, he said, "Get your McSistence ice cream here." And he's got Ben and Jerry's ice cream logo and Unilever. Unilever owns Ben and Jerry's ice cream. Anyway, I thought that was funny. So anyway, Bernie, as I showed, let's see, Bernie's website. So it gets confusing. This is Bernie's 2020 website. And this is a familiar message, not me, us. And that was the thing about Bernie's campaign. It was a populist coalition. It was a big movement. And it was incredible. And he was right about this. It wasn't about him. It was about his supporters. But now it's just about defeating Donald Trump this time around. Yeah. So anyway, this is his 2020 campaign website, and you can click on the issues, and that's what's interesting. So he had wiped his website clean of all of his positions in 2016 for 2016. And these are the issues he has. And he has immigration reform. And this is what he says. I showed this before. So, yeah, I showed this in my other videos. Anyway, that's his position on immigration. The thing about gun safety, okay. Yeah, see, he didn't have this on his 2016 website. So he's taking on a stronger position in opposition to the NRA, and he's supporting stricter gun control now. So he's starting to toe the party line. Well, he's definitely towing the party line, the Democratic Party line now. Yeah, so there's this article from Telesur about how he and Ilhan Omar are blaming the NRA for the gun violence after the Virginia Beach shooting. What else here? I think Bernie. Yeah, see, here's an article from 2015. So I remember when he was running against Hillary, he was really being smeared on his position about gun ownership. And let's see. Oh no, that's what I just showed you. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So here's another article from 2015. So there were a lot of articles where he was being smeared on his position. And this is an article from last year. And this is from the Burlington Free Press in Vermont. And so Bernie's position on gun rights has definitely changed, especially since the Parkland shooting in Florida last year. Yeah. So he's starting to sound more like the rest of the Democrats on Capitol Hill. Yeah, but it still mentions his record. Yeah, it says here, for years, Sanders has been dogged by questions about his long-term record on gun control, with Hillary Clinton hitting him hard on the issue during the 2016 Democratic primary. Yeah. So he's definitely changed his position. Yeah. No, he doesn't, his positions have not been as strong on gun control as the other Democrats, but that has rapidly changed. So here's an article from this one is from last year, and gun control push complicates Sanders's 2020 ambitions. So yeah, I would say he's had to change his tune definitely for 2020. It says new Democratic energy for gun control. This is from The Hill. New Democratic energy for gun control legislation could complicate the presidential ambitions of Senator Bernie Sanders, independent Vermont, who's less hawkish on the issue than other potential 2020 candidates. The Vermont senator's record on gun rights has already proved to be a hurdle on the national stage. While Sanders won over many on the left on economic issues, Hillary Clinton attacked Sanders during the 2016 Democratic presidential primary for being too moderate, especially early in his political career, on gun control. Now, the gun control movement's new spotlight after the mass shooting at a Florida high school could put Sanders in a bind. So the Parkland shooting, they're talking about them. And Bernie, actually, he did meet with some of those students from, it was the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Yeah, so Bernie has definitely changed his tune. I'm going to go back to the Wayback Machine. So it's interesting. I've been kind of, I had the link to Bernie's old, this is the Wayback Machine. This is Bernie's old 2016 campaign website. And it's actually an active link if you click on it the right way. So what you have to do, the link I had in the other video was just on his stand on in opposition of open borders. So he's still opposed to open borders. That's what he says, but he supports comprehensive immigration reform, which is even worse, is as bad or worse. So what you do, I'll give you these links. So this is the Wayback Machine. So it's an active link, and you can go through all of Bernie's old policy positions. So what I learned is when I went to his position on open borders and immigration, I clicked on the issues, and I was able to see all the list of his positions on issues. So there is he didn't have anything in 2016 on gun control. So I just showed you, whoops, wait a minute. Where is it? No, that's not it. Yeah. So he has, this is the 2020 website. So he definitely has a position on gun control. He didn't have one in 2016. So yeah, he has one. He had one. Okay. Immigration, and that was about, so immigration. Yeah. So when you click on the immigration, so this is interesting. So he had on his website an policy position opposed open borders. But so this is the 2016, this is the Wayback Machine. So 2016 website, he did indeed have a position in support of comprehensive yeah. So it says in 2013, he voted for the comprehensive immigration reform bill that would have legalized millions. So amnesty. So in 2016, he did support amnesty and comprehensive immigration reform. So it's saying that he did have problems with, so even Bernie knew there were problems with that legislation, but he's not saying that now. Now he's just come out openly in support of comprehensive immigration reform. So he knew because of trade agreements like NAFTA, and now NAFTA is turning to the SMC, USMC trade agreement for US, Mexico, and Canada. And so, he's showing that NAFTA, increased poverty in Mexico. But so even then he was supporting amnesty, really. And Scott was showing amnesty was what Reagan implemented. So paved the way for a swift and fair legislative roadmap to citizenship, which is really vicious circle for immigrants, really. 11 million. And I think that's a very conservative estimate of how many immigrants there are, really. So this is Bernie's 2016 position on DACA, DAPA. Yeah. So all he did was get rid of his on his website. All he did was get rid of his position on open borders, because I think that was a problem of sort of explaining the issue, the problem with uncontrolled immigration, really. I think that's why they got rid of that part of the website about open borders. That's what I've realized since I did that video, and then Scott corrected me that there is a difference between open borders and comprehensive immigration reform. So Bernie's old position against open borders explains why mass migration is a problem, and that's why they got rid of it. Yeah, so this is what's interesting. Anyway, so Bernie's changed. He's not an independent anymore. He's definitely a Democrat, so he's fully on board with comprehensive immigration reform. He's not going to talk about the problem of mass migration anymore, because that's open borders and comprehensive immigration reform is mass migration, mass immigration. Um, so, yeah, his position on immigration or the problems mass migration have changed. His position on gun control has changed. Before, back in 2016, he did not demonize Donald Trump. He is now. And so he's not talking anymore about why he and Trump appealed to people. It was this populist message and talking about how manufacturing jobs have been destroyed. So when you go to Wikipedia, what's interesting when they're talking about the 2016 election. So 2016, Bernie had a huge populist coalition behind him. So Democrats, left, right, and center supported Bernie. Even evangelicals. There were people who had supported Ben Carson in 2016, and then Ben Carson dropped out of the GOP primaries. There were Ben Carson supporters who switched over to Bernie in the Democratic primaries. Yeah. So here's what's interesting. So this is talking about the 2016 election. So in 2016, 12% of those who voted for Bernie in the Democratic primaries, they ended up voting for Trump in the general election. And that's why Trump won. It wasn't about any interference from Russia or anything. And then I remember this in contrast. So here's the thing. Back in 2008, actually more Clinton supporters ended up voting for John McCain than Bernie Sanders supporters ended up voting for Trump. So Bernie Sanders supporters actually were more loyal to the Democratic Party than Hillary Clinton supporters were. Because Hillary Clinton, after all, is a corporate centrist. So she started out as a Republican. That's what I call Hillary Clinton GOP, a former GOP pom-pom girl or cheerleader or whatever. Yeah. So people forget that Bernie had a populist coalition. So he's better known now. And he's definitely a Democrat. Bernie is definitely a Democrat now. He's not even pretending to be an independent at all on the issues. No. Yeah, so that's why there were so many Bernie Sanders supporters who ended up voting for Trump, and that's why Bernie didn't really demonize Trump. I remember Bernie said Trump was actually a smart politician, smart man. He won the election after all. I mean, he had that message, populist message. But Trump is not a populist president. Let's not kid ourselves. So that's what's different now for the 2020 election. Bernie, he doesn't have that populist coalition anymore. So he's definitely a Democrat. So his appeal, he's better known among Democrats. So he's doing better among Democrats this time around than he did the last time at this time in the election cycle. But he doesn't have the coalition behind him that he had then. Anyway, that's what's different now. So I guess the other thing is, I remember Bernie was kind of reminiscent of the FDR New Deal, but Bernie has flipped. He's gone from the FDR New Deal to the DNC Raw Deal. Yeah. So anyway, that's all I want to say for now. Thank you for your patience, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye.